For years, I woke up every morning with a pit in my stomach, dreading the day ahead and thinking about all the ways that I cannot do what I want to do. Anxiety and these anxious thoughts controlled my life. I tried things from excessive exercise to therapy to meditation, breathwork, even psychedelics, and nothing gave me the long-lasting change that I was looking for. Until I discovered this one simple shift that changed everything. And if you're struggling with anxiety right now, then this might be the very thing that helps you break free from it. Welcome to my channel. My name is Evan Spargo. I help high-achieving men overcome anxiety to reclaim their confidence and step into their power so they can get what they want in their life, love, and leadership. Today's episode, I'm going to be talking about my personal journey with anxiety, how I've overcome it, broken free from it so that it no longer controls my life. And so that's what I'm going to share with you today. So a little bit about my story. I was a very shy and anxious kid. I literally did not speak. I didn't talk. I was in social situations with family. I'd be behind mum and dad's legs, hiding from everyone as we met new people. At school, I was hiding underneath the stairs before the school bell rang because I didn't want to speak to anyone else. I was afraid of everyone else. At recess, at lunchtimes, I'd spend by myself and then again come out when the bell rang. This is just something that I lived with growing up. Just this nervous energy, this tension, this constant worry, looking for threats, just on edge. And so this led into my 20s where social anxiety was really running rampant, where I genuinely struggled to speak in front of groups. So I would resort to alcohol as a way to move through that. And I reckon I spent at least every single weekend in my 20s blind drunk and in a paralytic state where I couldn't remember the night before, purely because I drank so quickly and so much in order to get the confidence to speak in front of other people. So I would be anxious beforehand, thinking about what are they going to think of me? How am I going to show up? Am I going to make a fool of myself? Drink really quickly, get drunk, and then the next day, until Sunday, until maybe Tuesday, I started to get a bit better. I'd be sitting in anxiety thinking, well, what did I do last night? I can't remember what I did. What did I say? Who did I talk to? How did I make a fool of myself? And you're just sitting with this pit of anxiety, just in constant worry. And so this was just a pattern that I learned to live with. And so this translated into poor behaviors, doing regrettable things, and then that just continually added to the anxiety that I was experiencing. And so what else happened was I would become a people pleaser, a perfectionist. I'd become the nice guy just so that I could prevent people criticizing me, judging me, rejecting me, to not embarrass myself. And also I had this fear of being hit, getting into conflict and getting into a fight, which I'm going to talk a little bit later in this video. And so this anxiety just never left me. As much alcohol that I could drink, as much that I could numb it with exercise, it just continually lived with me. And it got to a stage where this anxiety turned into depression, and I had bouts of depression, and that led to moments where honestly you're questioning whether you should still be alive. That's how much this was just eating away at me. And it got to its worst last year, especially at the beginning of last year. My partner and I, we moved to Bali, which was one of our biggest dreams, and we lasted 6 months. We failed. And I went there, made a few poor decisions. I pretty much spent all my money and had to come back home to Australia to start from scratch again. And that brought upon a lot of anxiety. And it was a few months of being back where every single morning, literally waking up with that pit feeling in my stomach, constantly worried about how we're going to make ends meet, how am I going to survive today? And one morning it was at its absolute worst, and I said to myself, enough's enough. Instead of running away from it, instead of avoiding it, I'm going to sit with it. So I went into my room, sat down, closed my eyes, and I felt this anxious feeling in my chest surging through, this energy just surging through. And instead of trying to exercise it out or breathe it out, I just decided to sit with it. So I just sat with it, closed my eyes, sat with it, and it got extraordinarily intense, and it got more intense and more intense. But I just said, I'm just going to stay with it. And eventually it started to dissipate. It started to deflate. It started to come down. And as it started to come down, I started to relax. My mind started to get clear. I started thinking clearly. My thoughts were more positive. And I started to recall memories of the past where I had this similar feeling. And it all started to make sense of why I had this anxious feeling. I was walking around with it all the time. And so I had this huge relief, and I thought, I'm onto something here. So the next few days, of course, it didn't go away straight away, but it got less and less, and within a week or two, it was gone. I was waking up without that anxious pit feeling in my stomach, the obsessive thoughts of how things can go wrong. I started waking up neutral, and I was like, wow, it changed absolutely everything in the way that I relate to anxiety, and anxiety no longer has the control that it once did over me. And since then, I hardly drink anymore. I meditate, breathwork regularly, exercise regularly. I'm just a lot clearer. So this is what I learned about anxiety. Anxiety is not the enemy. The anxiety is there to alert us, to protect us from potential threat and danger. So it's there to switch on our nervous system, to go into a fight, flight, freeze response in order to protect ourselves from the perceived danger, the perceived pain that we think is right there, ready to attack us. And what I've learned is that there was a time in our life where, in the past, where an incident, an event was so overwhelming for us to deal with in the moment, we suppressed the emotions that came up. And so what happens is when we suppress that emotion, it stores as energy, and energy is an anxiety that sticks with us. And so whenever we face a similar moment in the future to that very incident from the past, our anxiety is going to get triggered. And all the thoughts that come with that anxiety is going to be triggered as well. So for instance, if you were bullied when you were younger and you reflected upon it and you said that you were no good, you're not good enough, this kind of thing, these beliefs, that every time that you perceive there's conflict, you're going to start thinking, you're going to start fearing it, you're going to run away from it or fight it, and you're going to have these thoughts that I'm not good enough, and all the thoughts that you created from that very incident from the past. And so this anxiety is guiding us to come back into our body and face it and to process it. So as we move along in life, our emotions, in particular anxiety here, is going to pop up for us to look at it, to process it, and help us heal our past. And so the example I used about the bullying, I used it because that's what I went through. So when I was younger, I was in grade 1, and I remember I saw these bullies start to bully these younger kids. And so I went up to them and I stood up to them and said, stop doing that. And so what happened is they turned around and beat me up. And so the message I told myself was that I'm not safe to stand up for myself. I'm not safe to speak in front of a group of guys. And what happened was the majority of my life, I feared conflict, because conflict meant that I was going to get beaten up. Conflict meant pain, I was going to get hurt. So every time that I sensed there would be conflict as I grew up, and especially as an adult, my anxiety would turn on, perceiving that threat is imminent, that it's going to come, that I could be potentially beaten up. And so that anxiety brought the energy for me to run away from conflict. So hence why I became such a people pleaser, a nice guy, because I didn't want to deal with conflict because I thought it would be danger for me. And so that's how anxiety works. Anxiety is there to protect us, to sense danger for us. But the problem with anxiety is that if we allow it to run rampant for a very long time, even if there is no danger at all, but because it's just constantly switch on and our thoughts are continually creating that anxiety, that worry, then it's going to become chronic stress, and that chronic stress can turn into depression, and then depression can turn into even more severe mental illnesses or sometimes suicide, which is very common now, tragically, for men, especially men who are incredibly hard on themselves, driven, ambitious. So that's a little bit what I've learned about anxiety, and that if anxiety pops up, again, it's there for us to alert of danger, but also it's there for us to process. Because 90% of the emotions that we feel, especially negative emotions, are from the past. And they're just wanting to come up for us to process it. Okay, we're reacting things in the moment from the past incidents like the one I told you about, the bullying. So there's a simple process that we use, or that I use, that helps me move and break free from this anxiety. And so I'll explain it now. Number one is that we accept anxiety. Accept that we're feeling anxious. We want to be careful about not saying we're an anxious person, because we don't want our identity to revolve around it. But we want to just say, okay, I'm feeling anxious and this anxiety is affecting me. Because what happens is once you own it, that means you can control it and change it. Okay? Accept that we're feeling anxious. Accept that it's there to serve us and protect us from something, but also it's there to teach us something, guide us something that is unprocessed in us, something that's suppressed in us. It's going to teach us about a danger from our past that we no longer need to be afraid of. So that comes from acceptance. The second thing is to process it, to feel it. So once we acknowledge that it's there, most humans will run away from anxiety, avoid it, try to overcome it, try to beat it, try to resist it, numb it. Instead, what we do is we feel it. We sit there, we feel the anxiety to its fullest, because that's all it wants to do. Just like sadness wants us to experience it through tears. Anger wants to move through us through action, whereas anxiety just wants us to feel it through just feeling that tension in the body, fully allowing it to be there without trying to remove it, and eventually it starts to process and falls away. And what happens is when you process it, it allows our thoughts to clear up and to gain the lesson from the anxiety. What is this anxiety trying to teach us? Is it trying to teach us that, hey, we're not actually under threat, that we are safe with what we're trying to do? Or is it trying to bring our attention to something in the past that's still eating away at us that we need to address and heal, and just to make peace with, so that it no longer has to play out in our lives? And once you've got that lesson, we can integrate it. And that's the third stage, integrating it. So taking the lesson and then implementing it in your everyday life. Knowing that if this anxiety comes up, is this true anxiety? Is this fear real, or is it something that's made up in my mind? Because remember, my mind is protecting me from something. Okay? So this is the processes that I personally use myself, and that's helped me break free from the anxiety that was crippling me for my life. This is what I use with my clients on a one-on-one basis, and I see great results. There was one guy that I worked with last year who was a pilot. He came in with severe anxiety. He was on anxiety meds and couldn't fly because of the state that he was perpetually in. And so we sat down and we went through this work. And within 6 weeks, his anxiety was gone. He started thinking positively, started looking for a new career, started looking for new ways of traveling. He just started to live again because he wasn't crippled by that anxiety. And that's the power of this work, of just facing the anxiety and processing it rather than running away from it, which most people do. So if you resonated with this video, my story, the process, and if you're keen to start to move your anxiety, I created a video called the letting go meditation. It's a guided meditation I created. It's in the previous video before. I'll put a link in the description below so you can check that out. It's a 15-minute guided meditation taking you through the process that I just explained to you. Start doing this on a few times a week whenever you're feeling anxious, and I guarantee you're going to start to let that anxiety go and it's no longer going to control you. I'm going to be talking more about this in my channel moving forward, so if you're keen to tune in more, to learn more, and know that you're not alone in this world facing anxiety, then hit that subscribe button, like this video, and get those notifications going so that you can stay tuned. Thanks for listening today, and we'll see you next time.